Oh yeah. I didn't want to know when
And he also served as a submariner, so he can hold his breath for a long time. And I'm also told that he looks like one too. I don't know what that means, but let's welcome him up here and get a look at him. DJ Thorpe.
Thanks, Cal, for the introduction. Can everybody hear me in the back? I was told to talk really loud. We were all told, talk really loud. So can you hear me in the back? Hoorah! All right. So, from the Armed Forces last year, Trevor came up here and he told this story that I can't even come close to. My time in the service was in a submarine. I've been underwater for like 2 years of my life, add it all up. And I can't hold my breath for 2 years quite, like 18 months is my max on holding my breath. So I don't have a great military story like Trevor has, so we're gonna talk about elk hunting, if that's okay with everybody. So there's this fella by the name of Aldo Leopold. Give me a shout if you know who Aldo Leopold is. And he wrote this book called the Sand County Almanac. Let me know if you read the Sand County Almanac. All right. And he wrote this story in the back of the Sand County Almanac called Thinking Like a Mountain. You guys familiar with that story? Okay, so that story ends with the death of some Mexican gray wolves that we're trying to extirpate, a little over 100 years ago, making room for cattle on the range, and we get predators out of the way. And that story ends with this kind of transformative experience for Aldo Leopold, where he's watching this wolf die, and the fierce green fire fades out of her eyes, and he has this transformative moment on like what is our impact on the landscape, and is the way we're doing things right now, is it the right thing to do for the future, right? A couple of years later, he introduces the idea of the Gila Wilderness Area. That was in 1924, and he goes on to be like one of the godfathers of the idea of how we manage game and how we manage conservation. So now, I'm in this country about 100 years later, this is a few years ago, and I draw my first elk tag. Right, a couple years out of the Navy, you gotta wait to draw a tag. In Arizona, these things don't just come out. It's not like living here in Montana, you just go buy your sportsman's license every year. So, I move out west after the Navy, and I draw my first like real deal big game tag. I got this archery elk tag, and it's in the A-Bar-S National Forest, which is where 100 years before Aldo Leopold is doing his work and he's having his transformative experience. So my goal for this hunt, I've never hunted elk before, I don't know a damn thing about elk. I know the country pretty well, I've been back there fishing a whole bunch, chasing birds back there. But my goal for this hunt is not to kill an elk. My goal here is I just want to learn about elk, I want to experience elk, and I want to figure out if I can just be a participant in the natural community and just move around and be a part of this with the elk and just kind of figure them out and like maybe get a shot at killing an elk, right? So that's my whole goal for this thing. So I go after it hard. 23 days of scouting from the time I draw the tag till the season starts, and I figure out elk. I get close to elk, and I'm not saying I'm a good hunter. This is not the case. But I get elk somewhat figured out in this 23 days of scouting. I almost get run over by a spike and a cow, and I have a good old time scouting, figuring things out. And I got my plan A, I got my plan B, I got my plan C, and there's this one spot over on the side of the unit where I hear it's popular with the outfitters, which can be an issue in Arizona with a lot of pressure in a certain area, and I want to have this kind of alone, isolated, solo elk hunting experience. This spot's not high on my radar, but I got a couple of days before the season starts. I'm gonna go check it out. So I was late to using smartphones and Onyx and that kind of stuff, so I've still got topo maps out in front of me, and I figure out, okay, I've got a road here, I've got a road here, I've got wilderness, and I've got about 8 miles. Wilderness areas in Arizona are small. It's not like the Bob Marshall complex here, which is gigantic. We have a lot of wilderness areas in Arizona, but they're all pretty small. So I've got a little over an 8-mile stretch where there's not a road and there's not going to be a lot of immediate hunter pressure or a lot of pressure from outfitters and guides. And I'm going to go check it out a couple of days before the hunt starts, pull my truck up, get my day pack out, and I get there, and the road I want to drive in on, it's got a sign, it's got a gate across it, it says, closed to sensitive habitat. And I'm like, cool, what? That adds 3/4 of a mile or a mile to my roadless area that I'm going to walk in and hunt. That's great. Get my day pack on, I'm walking back there, and I don't get like a half mile in here, and I can hear a pickup truck beating down the road, just stiff spring, 3/4 ton truck, like you know the sound on a dry, rocky gravel road, right? Somebody's back here behind the gated road, and they're already back here running up with their truck, and I see the truck, silver pickup truck, and a big yellow and green seal on the door. It's the Arizona Game and Fish Department truck. It's my lucky day. It's gonna be the biologist. I'm putting my time in, I'm scouting, I'm gonna go talk to this fella, and I'm gonna figure out, I'm gonna get all the beta on where the elk are, and I'm gonna have a great opening day. I'm gonna go prove myself to this guy, it's gonna be great. Get up there, and these 3 gals get out of the truck. I'm like, okay, cool, it's gonna be the biologist, it's gonna be great. Walk up, introduce myself, say, hey, I got this elk tag. Can you tell me anything about where the elk are in the area? The girl looks at me and says, no, I don't know where the elk are in the area. Well, not really. I mean, I'm here trapping wolves. We're doing this reintroduction of the Mexican gray wolf. It's 100 years after Aldo Leopold helped extirpate these things. She's not telling me this, I'm thinking all of this, right? And she's here putting these wolves back on the landscape, right? So, she tells me that back in May, there were some cubs born in this wildlife sanctuary in Missouri the same day that some cubs were born in this pack that she's been studying on the mountain. And for Mexican gray wolves, genetics and like not having any genetic diversity is a problem for the packs that are out in the wild. So these pups get flown from Missouri in a little carton or however you fly wolf pups here to Arizona. She picks them up at the airport, tosses them in a backpack, hikes these wolf pups crawls into a wolf den where there is an alpha female nursing wolf pups, and she inserts 2 pups into the den, hoping, fingers crossed, that alpha female is going to pick these 2 pups up, adopt them, feed them, and she's going to introduce some genetic diversity into this pack. Sidebar, the 2 girls who are with her are friends from school or grad school or whatever. One of them is a biologist up here in Montana. She does the same thing, but with grizzly bear cubs, right? So she goes into Mama Bear's den, and she kidnaps or bear naps a cub from said mama here and translocates them into another den with a mama bear over here, which is crazy. So props to the folks who are doing this kind of work. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Jamie knows. So I'm like, okay, so there's wolves here, so there's like not going to be any elk, right? She's like, well, I see this herd of cows and calves, and they're up this hillside over here, and if you go a ways back, they're probably out there feeding right now. But if you're going to hunt back here, I'm trying to trap these pups, but I'm only allowed to trap 1/4 of a mile off of this road, and my traps are double laminated, rubber lined jaws, and they got a radio on them, so I have to get back here in a certain number of hours and check these traps, and if you ever try to trap wolves, they are super tricky, super difficult to trap. Like it's intimidating for me to go, I live up here now, and it's intimidating for me to invest time to go do this because they're such cagey critters. And she's got like the hardest job of all to trap these things because she can't, handcuffs are on for her ability to trap these pups. So she says, well, pull your map out, show me where you think you're gonna go hunt. And I got it all planned out. I got this finger ridge that comes down, and there's this little nipple on it right there, so I know there's like enough flat ground in between where I can probably set up a tent and camp, because this whole side of this mountain is just sheer and steep and miserable and nasty. She said, great, here's the deal. This is what wolf shit looks like, this is what coyote shit looks like, this is what cat shit looks like, these are cat tracks, wolf tracks, coyote tracks. I need you to tell me all of the sign that you see back there. Here's your homework, go get to work. And the elk might be up that way. So I'm like, great, now I got a homework assignment on my first big game elk hunt, right? So we part ways, and I go back there, and sure enough, A mile later down the trail, there's the herd of elk. So I find a spot to sit and I settle in, and I'm looking at cows and calves, cows and calves, cows and calves. Cool. And I look down, and there's this little trickle of a stream down this gully, and this area burned in 2012. It's a few years after that, and there's all this young aspen coming up in there, and there's this aspen tree at the bottom of this gully that's just like whipping back and forth, not with the wind. As soon as I get my binos down there, all I see is this right main beam of this giant bull elk. And I get the glass on, I'm like, whew. Plan D just became plan A, right? I'm stoked. There's this huge bull down there, and he's got the number one brow tine on the right side comes up. He's super symmetrical, but this brow tine on the right side just comes like almost straight up. Like, cool. Plan D is now plan A. I'm gonna back out. I'm gonna get my pack loaded up. Tomorrow's the day before opening day. Get relaxed, hike in, go to my spot, figure all of this out, and get to work. So, next day I do that, hike back there, and sure enough, get to the same spot. I got 6 days of food on my back, same spot, same elk, same hillside, and I decide I'm gonna figure out which way they're gonna go. Are they gonna move up? Are they gonna move down? Are they gonna move towards me, away from me? And then I'm gonna move around them so I don't just blow everything out of here the day before the season opens up. And I'm noticing, I'm kind of figuring out the area and stuff, and where the aspen are, and where the thermals are, and I got a plan for I'm gonna get into these young trees, and I can move through them laterally, and then just drop out if they're grazing below those aspens. So I got my whole plan figured out. And I'm having a snack, and I'm watching these elk, and I see something moving in the grass ahead of me. Everything burned, right? So it's all like thigh to waist high grass out there. Everything's green right now, it's looking good. But there's something moving, and it's way too small to be an elk. And I see it move again, it's coming towards me, and I'm watching the elk, and I'm watching this thing, and all of a sudden, this wolf is running right at me, right? And I know it's a wolf, because it's about the size of a coyote. Mexican gray wolves aren't super big, but she's got this GPS collar hanging off of her neck. And I know we're not GPS tracking coyotes out here, right? So I'm like, holy crap, that's a wolf. I get point and shoot camera out, and I'm like snapping pictures of this, and she's just like running at me. I'm like, it's getting kind of weird. She's not like super aggressive, ears aren't pinned back, she's not sprinting, she's like trotting like a happy dog wagging her tail, but eyes locked on me, right? So she's running at me, and at like 20 yards away, she just makes this U-turn, and she runs up towards the elk, and that's it. Just disappears into the grass. Put my pack back on, the elk move up, so I move down and get to my spot, and it's looking good. Everywhere I got these wallows here, and rubbed up trees there, there's elk scat everywhere. This is like, it smells like bull elk. It is good. Get to my spot, drop my pack, set up my camp, looking good. And I decide I'm gonna walk a little bit further and see if there's like a good stream for a water stream. I'm planning on being back here 6 or 7 days, first half of the season, right? And I'm just like 175 yards from my camp, there's just these two big walls, and it is looking juicy. Get some water, walk back to my camp, and I get back to my camp, I make some dinner. Gastronome hadn't been invented yet, so I'm eating some terrible dehydrated meal. It's not delicious. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, the sun's going down over one of my favorite mountains in the state of Arizona, and I'm watching the sunset, and I'm eating this crappy meal, and I'm just like taking it all in, and I've got it figured out. I did it. I set out to figure out elk, to fit into this community in nature. I'm having this experience, and I look over, and there's two 5x5 bulls fighting over that wall that's like 170 yards from my camp. And I'm just like, I'm alone, and I'm having this moment, right? Like heavy gravity moment, the sunset, and I'm just totally satisfied. And I thought to myself, I did it. The season's not even open, and I did it. But if I didn't have this tag burning a hole in my pocket, I wouldn't have spent 23 days out there. I wouldn't have figured this species out. I wouldn't have done any of it, and it wouldn't have culminated with me having this solo experience, this night that was made for me on this mountain. And I thought to myself, it was like I was almost like a little bit sad because it was over. The season was going to start tomorrow, and it was time to get to work. And I'd accomplished the mission. I did it. And so I went to bed that night totally at peace. But I don't care what happens for the next 14 days. I might punch a bull tag, I might not. I'm just gonna take every day as it comes because mission has been accomplished. I did what I set out to do. And I settled in to my sleeping pad and I just went to sleep, the most peaceful start of a night's sleep ever, which is rudely interrupted by bark, 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 howl. Bark, 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 howl. Anybody have a dog that barks at a predator, right? It's a different bark when that dog barks at a predator. I'm getting barked at like that. I'm the predator who's getting barked at, and the wall of my tent is shaking with every one of those barks, and there's a wolf right next to my head, yelling at me, screaming in my ear, bark, 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 howl. And not like a cool, oh, none of that. Just one shrill, pissed off note, right? I found out later that I was camped where the rendezvous spot is. So this is where the wolves come together, and one adult wolf stays back with all the pups, and the other adult wolves go off and they go try to find something to eat. And when they find something to eat, they howl back, and the babysitter wolf takes the pups and they go eat. I'm camped in babysitter land, not the spot to be. But I thought to myself, well, the biologist, she told me there's 126 of these things in the United States in the wild right now. How many people get to have a conversation, it might be one way, but get to have a conversation with one of these, well, this is crazy, right? And I knew, my hand went to my bear spray right away, there's a lot of bears in there. Hand went to my bear spray, and I thought, no, you know what? This thing, I saw how big these wolves are. This is not if I stand up out of this tent, I'm just gonna create conflict that doesn't need to be there. It's not gonna kill a full-size human being. And I just relaxed into the situation of having a one-way conversation with this wolf. And then another wolf howled, and then another wolf howled, and then this wolf howled back. And this wasn't the bark, 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 shrill howl, pissed off. This was they're having a three-way conversation, and I'm stuck in the middle of it. And it was wild. And I fell back asleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I get some breakfast going, I get some coffee in my cup, and I got cheap, crappy stainless steel stuff. I'm just making a whole bunch of noise. It's not being quiet. And I even have my boots tied, and I hear the first bull bugle. The sun's not up yet, and I hear another bull bugle. I'm like, I better tie my boots, right? And so I'm slamming my coffee, finishing my buckwheat, tying my boots up, and it's starting to get a little bit light. It's not shooting light yet, right? But stuff's moving around, it's happening. And there's more than one bull, and they're coming right towards me. So I move up out of my camp a little bit, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't get into that aspen, because right now it's not warm enough down below me, and the thermals are coming down the mountain. And if I get into that aspen, I'm gonna be SOL, because my scent's gonna come right out, and I've got no cover, and I can see the first bull coming through. And I can see the second bull coming through, and they're all bugling, there's bachelor herd, just having a good old time. They don't know that it's opening day of elk season yet. They're about to find out, but they don't know yet. And they're having a good time, and they're coming through, and there's this one bugle in the back that every other elk in front of it reacts to, right? This elk's got his head down eating, that one's walking, and that bugle comes out of the back, and this elk lifts its head up and stops eating, and that elk stops walking, and it turns back, and they're all paying attention to this one bugle in the back. Now, it's my first elk tag. I've got no business calling shots. I'm not Babe Ruth, but I decide I'm gonna wait just a minute. I just wanna see that bull in the back that's driving this bachelor herd through here. So I wait. And that bull comes out, and it's starting to get a little bit light, and that bull is a big, symmetrical 6x6, and his brow tine number 1 on the right side comes straight up. Once again, I'm not an elk hunter yet. I don't know what I'm doing, but I decided it's opening day. I've got 14 days of this hunt. I'm already totally satisfied. I'm gonna try to put an arrow in that bull. And I let 5 6x6s walk in front of me, some of them close. And there's a bunch of raghorns with them too. It's a big, huge bachelor herd. And we get to the point, I've got no cover, I've got no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm crawling, and I'm sitting, and I'm waiting, and I got a rock that I'm gonna try to get to, right? I feel like this rock's the size of a Volkswagen. I went back there the next spring when it thawed out. This rock's half the size of this chair. It's not that was my cover, right? And that bull comes through, and he gets to the point where if that bull takes another step, he's going to start walking away from me faster than I can move without being detected by the rest of these elk. And I need to make my move now. And he stops between 3 trees that are kind of in a triangle, like 2 trees in the front and 1 in the back, and he's right between them. And I decide I'm going to make my move, but I'm going to make the perfect shot, right? So I've got this kind of 8-step plan for how I take an archery shot. And I stand up off the ground, and I get myself square, and I lock my feet into the ground. I look at my hand on my bow, and I think to myself, before doing any of this, that if this shot doesn't go well, if it doesn't feel perfect, I'm not going to release this arrow. Or if I'm too shaken, I can't let the bow down, I'm going to launch the thing into a tree over there. But if it's not perfect, I'm not going to let go of this arrow. And I look down at my release, I look down at my hand on my bow, and I put my release on the string, and I come up and I draw back, and I settle into my sights, and I start building back tension. And before I know it, that arrow's gone. I didn't even think about releasing that arrow, and that arrow's gone. And I hear this crack, and there's this tree right behind the bull's vitals, right where my arrow's supposed to go. And I think to myself, well, that's it. I shot low, I hit that tree behind the bull, set my bow down, I'm going to sit down and think about it, make a plan, and I'm going to chase the rest of those elk. And that bull takes 2 steps, and I can see my pink cock vein, 3 ribs back, perfectly placed, and that bull coughs, and I can tell he's dead on his feet. Bull walked another 50 yards, coughed again, tipped over dead. And I thought about this after a hell of a day of packing things out. It was 4 miles from the truck. It was dead timber everywhere, super rough day. But I thought about it on my way out that Aldo Leopold, 100 years before, had this transformative experience in this magical place. Here it is 100 years later, and I'm having my magical experience and my transformation in this magical place. And if it wasn't for the conservation heroes of yesteryear and the forefathers and the guys like Aldo Leopold, who just they built this foundation that we're standing on today, if they didn't do that work then, I wouldn't have this opportunity today. And so I look out in this crowd, and I'm looking at my conservation heroes today. And if it's not for you guys today, 100 years from now, these opportunities aren't going to be here tomorrow. So think about that, and thanks for listening.